Mukta Sango Anaham Vadi Vritutsaha Samanvitaha Siddhya Siddhyo Nirvikaraha Karta Satvika Uchyate. Now Krishna begins his exposition on the three different types of kartas. And he takes up Sattvika Karta, doer who is Sattvika in nature. In order to determine right action, it becomes important for us to understand the answers to two fundamental questions. Where are we? Who are we? Where are we is a very important question for us to reflect on. We operate, we meaning the Baddha Jivas, operate in the material world, which is subject to certain laws, the laws that govern the functioning, the workings of this material world. Therefore, it becomes important for us to understand these laws, to abide by these laws, and eventually to find a way, find the means of getting liberated from this material world. So, answers to the question, where are we, becomes fundamental. That is the reason why Krishna spends a lot of time on gunas, the foundational blocks of this material world. We have to understand the forces which are working against our freedom. If we do not understand the forces that are working against our freedom, it becomes impossible for us to gain freedom. For a rocket to be launched into space, it needs a certain amount of thrust, which should be greater than the gravitational pull of the earth. If the necessary thrust is not gained by the rocket, it cannot be launched into space. It needs to necessarily overcome the force of gravity. We all are subject to the force of the gunas, which like gravity keeps pulling us into the cycle of samsara. Whether we like it or not, whether we acknowledge it or not, this pull of the gunas is so very formidable that it is almost impossible for us to gain freedom from this pull of the three gunas. So therefore, we need to find the right answers to where are we, what are we up against. That would determine the right course of action. The second broad area of questioning is who are we? Typically, with a conception which is materialistic in nature, the driving question of our life always is what is mine or what can be mine. This is the driving question of our life. Because the underlying assumption is I have to possess, gain, acquire in order to increase my happiness. So therefore, the driving question of life is always what is mine? What can be mine? Right from childhood we grow up asking this question. What is mine? What is his? What is hers? What can be mine? How can I possess more and more? Unless the driving question changes from what is mine to who am I, there cannot be a beginning to our spiritual journey. Until we start asking this driving question, who am I, there can be no beginning to spiritual journey. The day we start asking this question and that becomes the driving question of our life, and we start seeking answers to that driving question, that's the day when our spiritual journey gets accelerated. Therefore, these are two fundamental questions that we need to seek answers, understand them, keep reflecting on them. But there is one more very important question to which also we need to find answers and understand those answers. Apart from the questions, where are we? Who am I? The third and most important question is, whose am I? Because right from our birth, we develop a sense of belonging. And it comes very naturally to us. Right from the time we take birth, there is a sense of belonging we develop. We belong to the body, we belong to the family, we belong to a group, we belong to a community, we belong to a race, we belong to a country, we belong to, this belongingness comes very naturally to us. And we are driven by the sense of belonging. Every action that we do, in a way, is driven by the sense of belonging. Now, only when we really understand who do we belong to, we need to move from an understanding of our belonging to our belongings to belonging to Krishna, belonging to the one who is the owner of all our belongings, including us. Actions cannot be liberating in nature. As long as we belong to something or someone other than Krishna, every action is binding by design, binding by nature. Only when we start to realize that we belong to Him, to Bhagavan alone, that is when, with the awareness of that belongingness, the actions that we do will become liberating in nature. So therefore, a karta, the one who performs work, should fundamentally have answers to all these three questions. Where are we? Who am I? And whose am I? Also, the karta, the doer, needs to be very clear of this action-reaction equation. So throughout the Gita, Krishna at length discusses this. A simplistic view of karma, action, reaction, is for every action there is a reaction. Very simplistic view. Which means there is an action, there is a result. But then, the more we deeply dive into Gita and start understanding, we also realize that it is not that simplistic. Every result is not just because of the action that we do. There is another factor that comes into the equation. So then, to understand it mathematically, we say result R is equal to not just A, action, we need to add A plus D, destiny, which is prarabdha karma. So R is equal to A plus D, where A is the current action that we do, but it is not just the current action which shapes the result, it is also our destiny, which is prarabdha. Now, what is our destiny? Our destiny is nothing but a sum total of all our karmas that are about to fructify in this very life, good and bad. That is the reason why we always experience this. Sometimes we think we have put in very little effort and the result is way beyond our expectation. We say we hit a lottery. Sometimes we put maximum effort and we fail. This happens to us all the time. Therefore, our result is equal to A plus D. Now, is the equation complete? No, there is one other factor. Now, destiny, which is prarabdha, sum total of all our karmas that is about to fructify in this very life, can manifest positively or negatively at a time which is beyond our control. Therefore, the third element in this equation is R is equal to not just A plus D, we need to add T to the equation, Kala, which is governed by Bhagavan. Because when our prarabdha manifests positively to work along with our current action to produce an extraordinary result is not under our control. Knowing this, we realize one fundamental fact. We are makers of destiny, no doubt. Why? Because destiny, after all, is nothing but sum of all our past karmas. While we are makers of our destiny, we must also realize we are not masters of our destiny. Because when this past karma will manifest positively or negatively is beyond our control. So, a karta who understands that he or she is a maker of his or her destiny is inspired to work, to do his part wholeheartedly. At the same time, the karta who also understands that he or she is not the master of his destiny also can easily accept the result, whatever it is. Now Krishna, therefore, when he analyzes the three important ingredients of action, he keeps karta towards the end. He takes jnana, he takes karma, and then karta. Originally, when he started off his discussion on the art and science of actions, he started off with 6 factors. Jnanam, Jneyam, Parijñāta, Trividha, Karma Chodana, Karanam Karma Karteti, Trividaha Karma Sangragaha. He took up 6 factors. Jnanam, Jneyam, Parijñāta, Jnanam, perceptual knowledge, Jneyam, object of knowledge, Parijñāta, knower. These 3, he said, together are the incitements to every action. They determine the quality of every action, the inducement, the motivation to every action. These are the 3 factors. Then he said the very execution of the action, the very basis, consists of karanam, karma, karta. Karanam are the organs of basically the indriyas. Karma is the very action, and karta. And then he took these 6 and he said, Karanam, the instruments of action, and Jneyam, the object of knowledge, the products of Prakriti, they are given. They cannot be transformed. What can be transformed are Jnanam, Parijñāta, Karma, Karta. Parijñāta and Karta are one and the same. The Jivatma, the indweller in the body, is the Karta, the doer, is also the Parijñāta, the knower. Thus, he summarizes the 3 factors. Jnanam, Karma, Karta, and then he takes up classifying each of these based on the 3 gunas. Now the Karta, who is also the Parijñāta, is the knower and he is the desirer. Of the 3 factors, Karta plays a very important role. Throughout the Gita, we keep discussing this central question. Are we doers or non-doers? Krishna seems to be confusing us a lot. At one point he says, hey Arjuna, you have to think you are the non-doer. At another point he seems to say, hey Arjuna, you are the doer. Now, am I karta? Am I akarta? How should I understand my nature? Very clearly, that's the reason why he spends a lot of time in the 18th chapter summarizing everything that he has discussed at length throughout the 17 chapters. And he says, the best way to understand this, hey Arjuna, is not to get confused about am I the doer or non-doer, to realize I am the server. I am the one who serves. That way, there is no confusion on whether I am the doer or not doer. Because once I know that constitutionally the Jivatma is a Karta, because the Jivatma has a duty to serve the Paramatma. And nothing more, nothing less, nothing more. So Krishna has made it very clear abundantly to Arjuna and to all of us. The results are his. There should be no confusion on this whatsoever. The results are his. Because Bhagavan orchestrates every event. He arranges everything and he knows what the result should be. And with his omnipotence, he doesn't need any of us. And he has demonstrated this in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. He has demonstrated through Vishwarupa to Arjuna. Hey Arjuna, you are not needed. The results have already been finalized by me. Mamaivayate nigatah purvameva nimittamatram bhavasavyasachind. The results have already been finalized, but I am giving you an opportunity to be part of my scheme, to play a small part, because that is your constitution. As an individual soul, every Jivatma has a part to play. And therefore, Krishna has the result. What he seeks is our endeavor to play our part. And therefore, the Karta, the doer of every action, should approach performance of every action by asking the question, not what should I do, how can I serve? A Sattvika Karta is one who does not approach any action, any work, any duty that needs to be performed, asking the question, what is the action to be done? What is the work to be done? Instead, he asks the question to himself, through this work, how can I be of service to Krishna? Because a Sattvika Karta understands that life spent in gratification of mind and senses is only a struggle and suffering. Mamaivamsho jivabhuta sanatanaha manashashtani indriyani prakritistani karshati, Krishna says. Karshati. Manashashtani indriyani prakritistani karshati. If the work is done only for the sake of gratification of senses, then it will only be a struggle. Life will continue to be a series of struggles. As long as the Karta is doing work with the notion of gratifying one's own senses. A Karta, therefore, should approach the work asking the question, how can I serve Krishna? So therefore, a Sattvika Karta is that Karta who understands his nature, who understands his identity, and approaches work from that understanding, that deep-rooted awareness. Krishna, in defining the nature of the Karta who is Sattvika, he also gives us a very important clarification. He says, Mukta Sangaha Anahamvadi Dhriti Utsaha Samanvitaha Siddhi Asiddhau Samobhut Nirvikaraha Karta Sattvika Uchyate. One who is a Sattvika Karta, one who operates in a liberated state, one who is in a state of freedom from all material attachments, one who is without the sense of ego, and one who has resoluteness, dhriti, and utsaha, and who is not moved, who is not shaken in success and failure, who remains equipoised. Such a Karta is Sattvika, he says. The first thing that we should take out here is utsaha. There are many things that we have to discuss. But I would like to take Krishna's definition of Sattvika Karta amongst several parts of the definition. It's important to take up utsaha, zeal, enthusiasm. Because unfortunately, the general conception of someone being spiritual is someone, one who is spiritual means one who always does actions in slow motion. One who is very serious, one who doesn't smile, poor fellow, he's now on the spiritual path. He also goes to satsang, it seems, every week. I don't know. Why so early? The conception is, in this fast-paced life, where passion is all about, success is all about passion, being spiritual, being sattvika means something is wrong. Unfortunately, even our TV serials contribute this. Rama is always shown in slow motion. I don't know why. Valmiki never wrote this. Even smiling is also slow motion. It takes one full episode for Rama to begin smiling and end smiling. And we all conclude that to be sattvika means even smile also doesn't come naturally. We have to even, control our smile. There is no laughter. There is no celebration of life. Everything seems to be constrained, controlled. Krishna sets the record straight. Utsaha. Life is a celebration. Sattvika means celebrating life. Full of energy, zeal, verve. Very, very important for us to understand this. Without spirit being spiritual, one can be high. This is the underlying message Krishna clearly gives. We don't need spirit. We need to be spiritual. Now, to be utsaha, what a sattvika karta, the concern of a sattvika karta is not about velocity of motion. It is more about clarity on direction. It is about not the type of the path, but where the path takes. The moment our direction is right, the moment the goal is properly set, which is where the moment the higher cause for every action is identified, a sattvika karta is energetic, is full of enthusiasm. No slow motion at all. We need to understand that, activity is rajasic, no doubt, but a sattvika karta can also be active. But this activity is activity where there is no loss of energy. Whereas, when there is activity and no productivity, that is rajasic. Activity where there is lot of productivity, loads of productivity is sattvic. A sattvika karta has a higher cause and he derives happiness out of the very act. And he is not worried about, concerned about the result. And therefore, he is always enthusiastic in performing the action. So that is the reason why Krishna says, Utsaha samanvitaha. So, sattvika karta is one who does every action with zeal, knowing that the direction of the action is so very important. Staying connected with Krishna. The other adjective for utsaha is dhriti. Now, incidentally, Krishna is going to take up this topic of dhriti later on, and he is also going to classify dhriti into three types: sattvika, rajasika, and tamasika. We will come to that when we come to those shlokas which deal with dhriti. But here, for a sattvika karta, when Krishna talks about dhriti utsaha, the utsaha is driven by dhriti. Now, when we order our desires, listen to this a little carefully. When we order our desires, there is no need to order some of our desires. When we order our desires, we don't need to order some of our desires. Now, the two orders have two different meanings. Order can mean structure, arrangement. Order can also mean command, instruction. Now imagine we all, many times face this challenge that we need to schedule our day. And we need to meet so many people. Now, some people are so very important. Some people may be our superiors It's not very easy to say no to them. We need to schedule our time. What is the best way that we can schedule our day effectively and productively? Only when we bring some order. We need to bring some order to the day, and when we arrange things based on priorities, it becomes easy to deal with the nature of the people, superior or not superior. Same is the case with desires. We need tremendous will to order our desires, which means command our desires. But how do we conserve our will? When we bring some order, some structure to our desires. Typically, we do not arrange our desires, structure our desires, because we don't really reflect on them and try to see how we can bring some kind of an arrangement. And we let them just rule us. When there is a disorder of desires, some desires are very powerful, some desires are not so very powerful. It requires tremendous will to deal with some desires. And in that process, we lose a lot of time and energy. So therefore, a sattvika karta, dhriti utsaha samanvitaha. His enthusiasm and his zeal is complemented with his ability to bring an order to his desires, an arrangement to his desires. A sattvika karta also has desires. A sattvika karta can also have desires which are rajasic and tamasic. But he becomes a sattvika karta when he brings a nice order where all his rajasic and tamasic desires are completely deprioritized. Just like how we have our own planners, how we manage our time, if and when we manage our time. We bring a certain order, certain priority. Similarly, our desires also need to be arranged and prioritized. The moment that happens, it becomes easy for the karta to choose the desire to indulge in. So therefore Krishna, the second line of the shloka, dhriti utsaha samanvitaha, sattvika karta. That is the reason why dhriti itself is a topic that needs to be discussed at length. Krishna takes this up, 3 shlokas and dhriti, where he is going to talk about sattvika dhriti, rajasika dhriti and tamasika dhriti later on. Now a sattvika karta is one who is, by design, he is complete. There is no sense of lack. That is why nirvikaraha, Krishna says. Vikara, nirvikara. Changeless, changelessness in the state. He remains in the same state. Krishna earlier describes how can we reach that state. Apuyamanam achalapatishtham samudramapah pravishanti yadvat. Apuryamanam achalapratishtam, Krishna says. Achalapratishtam. Unshaken by the flow of desires that keep coming in. Apuryamanam achalapratishtam samudramapah pravishanti yadvat. Tadvat kamayam pravishanti sarve sashanti mapnoti nakamakami. Wonderful shloka. Very profound shloka. A sattvika karta is a nakamakami. We will see what is nakamakami. Now, the metaphor that Krishna uses here is so very profound. Because what is kama-kami? Kama is desire. Kami is desirer. Kama-kami, desirer of desire. So a sattvika karta is one who is not a desirer of desires. So how do we understand this? We have to understand this through the metaphor that Krishna gives here. The metaphor of rivers flowing into ocean. Just like how rivers keep flowing into an ocean, but the ocean stays unaffected. Changeless, irrespective of the number of rivers, irrespective of the quantum of water that flows into the ocean. Similarly, he says, a sattvika karta, nakamakami is one. Desires keep flowing in, but by design does not reciprocate. Now we have this question. We always think desires having an outward direction. Whenever we discuss this process of desiring, right? The desire, and the desired object. Now, there is an outward connection. We desire something which is outside. We desire an outside object. When Krishna here gives an example, he's talking about rivers flowing in. The way to understand this is very important, because desire need not be just outward. Now, every sense object outside is a potential trigger of desire inside, injects desire in us. Now, this is the biggest danger, biggest challenge that we face in today's world. Because what is outside us is not within our control. And we are presented with so many temptations which are outside. The external sense objects trigger automatically, they inject a desire. Just like how rivers keep flowing, the external objects send the stimuli, which are, whether we like it or not, the stimuli will keep coming in. It is not in our control. Stimuli coming inside is not in our control. Reacting to that stimuli is in our control. Nakamakami is one who does not react to that stimuli. A Sattvika Karta is one who is like, because taking the metaphor of the ocean and the rivers, the ocean is so large that any amount of water that flows in, it's not going to overflow. It's going to stay the same. If instead of an ocean, if it is a puddle of water, a little amount of water that flows in, the puddle will overflow. If our inner happiness is like an ocean, then we are unshaken by external stimuli. But if our inner happiness is like a puddle of water, then every sense object is going to trigger a stimuli. So if the inner ocean of happiness is, if we have inner ocean of happiness, then every object of desire we show a red flag. Otherwise, if it's a puddle, we will put a red carpet. Every sense object is welcome. We are driven to fulfill. So we are injected with desires triggered by the external world, which is the most dangerous thing that can happen. So therefore, a Sattvika Karta, Krishna says, Nakamakami. Nakamakami. Kamakami is the desirer of desires. Is Nakamakami, which means desire can be injected, stimuli can come in, but to say yes or no is a choice exercised by the Karta. Also, another way to understand Nakamakami, we need to know the difference between what we desire and what we desire to desire. There is a big difference. This difference we will start to understand only when we start to reflect and visualize on our desires. Let's say we are triggered by a desire to indulge in an activity. At that moment, if we pause and start to reflect on and ask ourselves the question, if I am the best version of myself, not the current version, if I am the best version of myself, would I indulge in that desire? If we ask that question, many a times the answer would be no. Because deep inside us, we know what is the best version of our own self. Because deep inside us, we all have our higher aspirations. Deep inside us, we all know that we have greater potential to do things which are extraordinary. Deep inside us, we all know that we have God-given talents which we have not really put to use. So when we start asking this question to ourselves, then we get to understand with this reflection, we know that there is a big difference between what we desire and what we desire to desire. The more we start dwelling on what we desire to desire, our true aspirations get strengthened. Sattvika Karta is one who strengthens the sattvika karma, which are the real deep aspirations inside us, which is desires which will enable us to use our own God-given talents for contribution, not for consumption. Nakamakami Apuryamanam achala pratishtham samudramapaha pravishanti yadvat tadvat kamayam pravishanti sarve sashanti mapnoti nakamakami. Sashanti mapnoti. Shanti, peace. That state of being in the same state of being equipoised all the time can only be attained when one becomes a nakamakami. Also, it is very important for the karta to understand the difference between emotion and desire. Most often, our emotions get transformed into desires without us intervening. If we don't intervene, that's what happens. Now, what is that subtle difference between emotion and desire? Emotion is typically triggered from the external world. Emotions don't belong to us. Emotions are from outside. Emotions are reactive, whereas desire is within us. It's our own vasanas which cause our desires. Emotions are situational. They come and they go. Now I'm walking along the road. I have a very important person to meet. I'm walking along the sweet shop and then nicely I see all the sweets there. Nice big laddus. I can't stop, giving the laddu example. Suddenly there is an emotion of pleasure. Now, I have a choice whether this emotion can transform into a desire to rush inside, buy and then have it. I can. But most often what happens, this emotion typically, the emotion that is triggered from outside is what gets converted into a desire that is injected and then we indulge in that. So Nakamakami is one who knows how to handle his emotions, because emotions will keep coming and going. Emotions are triggered by people, by situations, by things that are outside. What is triggered by outside need not necessarily become my choices. So Nakamakami is a sattvika karta who clearly manages how to choose the right kind of desires. That is why Krishna says, Mukta Sangaha, Mukta Sango Anahamvadi. Chief characteristic of a sattvika karta is Mukta Sangaha. This Mukta Sangaha is very important to understand. Earlier, Krishna talks about the relationship between the attachment and desire. Dhyayato vishayan pumsaha sangasteshu upajayate sangat sanjayate kamaha. It is the sangha, the attachment that drives kama, our cravings. So, one who is mukta sangaha, one who has freedom from attachments, and therefore he also gains freedom from desires. Now, we need to extend our discussion on the whole desiring process. We said desire is linear. The desirer desires a desired object. Now, this is a linear relationship. But desire is much more than linear. Desire is actually triangular. Why do I say that? Mukta Sangaha, the word Sangha not only can be translated as attachment, Sangha can also be translated as association. Sat Sangha, associate. So Sangha, when it is association, therefore, Sangha driving kama, which means association can also drive cravings, can also drive desires. Who else knows this better than today's marketing professionals? The whole advertising industry is based on this premise of Sangha, association, driving kama. Right? All the celebrity ads. I identify with a celebrity, and if the celebrity buys that, then I have a craving to buy that, even though it is not needed. most of what we end up buying today is what we really don't need. But we are made to crave for that. So therefore, Sangha, association, driving karma also means if Dutsanga can drive wrong cravings, Satsanga can drive right cravings. So what is triangular here? Triangular here is I, the desirer, the desired object, and others who desire the objects. So this is triangular. Now, I can desire the object myself, or I am forced to desire an object through my association with somebody who desires the object. So it's a triangular relationship of desires. So that is the reason why my Sangha, which is my attachment to things and my association to people, becomes very important in the way I shape my desires. Who is a Mukta Sangaha? A Sattvika Karta is a Mukta Sangaha from two ways. He's gained freedom from worldly attachment to things. He is also attached himself strongly with people who are Sat. Mukta Sangaha also necessarily then means Sat Sangaha as well. Mukta Sangaha Anahambadi. No, Anahambadi. Ahamvadi. Ahamvadi means the one who has capital I. Large, everything revolves around that. Anahambadi means who knows the I has to be necessarily small, never capital. There is, again, it's very clear. Anahambadi is very clear. There is no confusion on whether I am doer, not doer. No confusion whatsoever. I am not a doer. I am not, neither I am doer, neither I am a non-doer. I am Krishna's dasa. The moment that realization comes, there is no confusion whatsoever. Mukta Sangaha Anahambadi Dhriti Utsaha Samanvitaha Siddhi Asiddhor Nirvikaraha. Siddhi Asiddhor Nirvikaraha. It is what Krishna calls Samatva. Krishna calls Yogaha Samatvam Uchyate. Samatvam Yoga Uchyate, Krishna defines. Yogastah Kuru Karmani Sankam Tyaktva Dhananjaya Siddhya Siddhyo Samo Bhutva Samatvam Yoga Uchyate, he says. He gives a very simple sutra. He says, what is yoga? Yoga is equal to samatva, he says. Yoga, yujyate iti yogaha. Anything which helps us to connect. Connect with what is the question? Most often, modern day yoga, there is only disconnection. Everything is done without knowing, connecting with what? True yoga is connecting with Krishna. If there is no connection with Krishna, whatever we do is of no use. Now this connection with Krishna, this yoga, he says yoga is equal to samatva. Samatvam yoga uchyate. Siddhya siddhyo samo bhutva. Samatvam yoga uchyate. Samatva is basically being equipoised. When my consciousness is stuck with material objects, it is very difficult for me to think beyond my wants. Very difficult for me to reflect on spiritual realities. I am only always reflecting on matter because my consciousness is locked into material reality, which is partial. When I am equipoised to material rewards, I have the opportunity to go beyond matter and start thinking about spiritual reality. So, Samatva is the foundation to be built over which spiritual life, the palace of spiritual life can be built. So that is why Krishna says, Siddhi Asiddhau Samo Bhutva. Immediately we can ask this question. Siddhi Asiddhau Samo Bhutva. How can Siddhi and Asiddhi be sama? Success and failure, how can it be equal? We do our work, any work that we do for success, how can we discount success? Whatever work that we do, if we really reflect on what we are really seeking, it is not success that we are seeking. What we are seeking is love. Because what success means to us is being loved more by the world. We think when we become successful, we will get more love from people. But unfortunately, the world frustrates us in four ways. How? One, success is not guaranteed all the time. Failure is very, very natural. So it's very frustrating all the time because it's not every time success is not guaranteed. Number two, even when we succeed, we may not attract the love as we expected. I buy a new car and I would want somebody to say something about it. If nobody, I drive, I meet with my friends, and imagine what would happen. I meet 10 people and nobody talks anything about it. Then my success, that success is gone. Because why? The love that I expected, I'm unable to attract, I'm frustrated. So even if I succeed, there can be frustration. Third, I can succeed, I may receive love, but people generally, the world in general, loves only my success and not me. Even when somebody praises, they praise the car, not me. They praise my possessions, my power. The love is not for who I am. The love is for the belongings that I think belong to me. So again, third frustration. Fourth, I may succeed and I may genuinely experience love from some people. But agonizingly, I discover that is short-lived. It has a shelf life. It can only be temporary. So, what is the way out? Krishna very clearly says the way out is to take the world out of the equation. Take the world out of the equation. Seek love beyond the world. Seek love from someone who is waiting to reciprocate all the time. Who is ready to shower boundless love all the time. When we take world out of the equation and start seeking love from Krishna, and when every work that we do, which is Sattvika Karta, does every work as an offering of love to Krishna. His work, or the work of Sattvika Karta, is nothing but a product of Krishna Prema. When that happens, then there is a sweet paradox here. What is the sweet paradox? Even though the world is taken out of equation, the sweet paradox is the Sattvika Karta who does such a work will gain success in this very world and will also be able to build a foundation for success in the world hereafter. That is why Krishna says, a Sattvika Karta is one who knows this. Siddhya Siddhyor Nirvikaraha. Karta Sattvika Uchyate. A Sattvika Karta is one who is Mukta Sangaha. A Sattvika Karta is one who is Anahamvadi. A Sattvika Karta is one who has Dhriti, and combined with Dhriti, Utsaha. Dhriti Utsaha Samanvitaha. And more importantly, he is Nirvikaraha, Siddhi Asiddhyor Nirvikaraha. Such a Karta is a Sattvika Karta. Now we know what kind of a Karta we all need to aspire for. In the coming shlokas, Krishna is going to describe what kind of Karta we should not try to become, which is Rajasic Karta and Tamasic Karta, which we will discuss in the coming sessions. Saram Sri Krishna.